Monica James sat at the head of the long, gleaming conference table, surrounded by a sea of concerned faces. The quarterly report lay open in front of her, each line like a jab to her stomach. Profits were down, employee turnover was up, and complaints about workplace morale had increased to the highest level in her company's history. Just 5 years ago, Monica's tech company had been a beacon of success, a thriving venture that everyone wanted to work for. But now her board members looked at her with subtle but unmistakable expressions of blame, their patience worn thin. She had poured her heart into this company, building it from the ground up, and the idea of it crumbling from within was both infuriating and terrifying. As the meeting wore on, Monica listened to her executives rattle off possible reasons for the downturn: market fluctuations, customer shifts, increased competition, but none of it felt like the real issue. She sensed a deeper problem lurking beneath the surface, something they either didn't know about or were too afraid to tell her. It wasn't until an anonymous employee survey report was slid across the table that her suspicions were confirmed. The feedback was brutal: accusations of a toxic work environment, instances of racial discrimination, and a growing divide between management and staff. These words, scribbled in cold, detached fonts, painted a picture of a company that felt unrecognizable to her. That evening, Monica sat alone in her office, replaying the meeting over and over in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was only hearing what her executives wanted her to know, a filtered version of the truth. The walls around her seemed to close in, the silence pressing down like a weight on her shoulders. She knew that no amount of boardroom discussions or managerial meetings would get her the answers she needed. To understand the root of the problem, she had to experience the company from a completely different perspective. The idea struck her with startling clarity: she needed to go undercover. Not as a manager or a supervisor, but as someone invisible, someone who could blend into the background without raising suspicions. A janitor. She could move unnoticed, hear conversations as they happened, observe interactions that others might shield from her if they knew who she really was. A surge of determination took hold, pushing away her doubts. This was the only way to get some unvarnished truth. With the help of a close friend outside the company, Monica arranged for a transformation. Her usual tailored suits and pristine hairstyle were replaced by a simple uniform, glasses, and a messier, graying bun. Makeup and prosthetics added lines to her face, subtly aging her appearance. By the end, she looked like a completely different person, a middle-aged woman named Mona, ready for a janitorial shift. Her first night was a shock to her system. As she walked through the familiar hallways of her company, now seeing it through the eyes of a worker rather than a leader, everything felt different. Gone was the quiet respect and acknowledgement she was accustomed to. Instead, she was met with blank stares, or worse, complete disregard. Mid-level managers and executives brushed past her as if she were a piece of the furniture, part of the background noise of their daily lives. That initial shift was grueling. Monica had never done physical labor like this before, and the repetitive, exhausting tasks quickly reminded her of the realities that many employees endured. She scrubbed floors, emptied trash cans, and wiped down conference room tables, all the while listening to the murmurs and snippets of conversations around her. The disdain and condescension with which some employees spoke of the higher-ups was unsettling, but what cut deeper were the comments directed at her leadership at her. Employees blamed her for the poor work environment, for ignoring their needs, and most alarmingly, for allowing discrimination to fester unchecked. As she moved through the building, Monica began to piece together a disturbing picture. She noticed how lower-level employees were subtly segregated from the rest of the workforce, rarely included in company events or meetings, and often treated as if they were invisible. Managers who had always seemed personable and professional in her presence showed a different side when they thought they were unobserved. She watched one manager, a man she'd personally hired, speak down to an immigrant employee, chastising her for a minor mistake with a harshness that bordered on cruelty. The employee, a woman named Carla, listened quietly, her face a mixture of resignation and humiliation. Monica felt a rush of anger and sadness. She wanted to intervene, to tell Carla that her work was valued, but she knew she had to remain in character. She could only offer Carla a brief, sympathetic smile, which Carla returned with a look of weary gratitude. This small exchange solidified something within Monica: her company was in trouble, and it wasn't just the profit margins or sales figures. The very culture she had once been so proud of had turned toxic. Later that evening, as she cleaned the break room, Monica overheard two mid-level managers discussing company policies in hushed tones. She listened closely as one of them, a woman who had been with the company for years, mocked the diversity and inclusion initiatives Monica had painstakingly implemented. "Honestly, those policies are just a waste of resources," the woman sneered. "We don't need to cater to every little group that walks in here. It's business, not a charity." Monica felt a stab of betrayal. These initiatives had been close to her heart, a reflection of her own values and belief in a fair and inclusive workplace. Hearing them reduced to a waste of resources by someone she had trusted left her reeling. She wondered how many other managers felt the same way but were simply too polite or strategic to say so in front of her. Her shifts continued, each one revealing new layers of issues she hadn't anticipated. During a late-night cleaning round, she happened upon a group of employees gathered near the supply closet, their voices low but tense. As she neared, she realized they were discussing her, the CEO they rarely saw, but whose decisions affected their lives daily. The bitterness in their words was palpable, their resentment aimed not only at the executives above them but at Monica herself. "She doesn't care about us," one employee murmured. "It's all about the bottom line to her. We're just cogs in the machine." Monica's heart sank. She had always prided herself on leading with empathy, on building a company that valued every individual. But somewhere along the line, that vision had become obscured, replaced by a reality that felt alien and hostile. She could feel the walls of her own company turning against her, as if she were a stranger trespassing in a place she no longer belonged. As she adjusted to her role as Mona, Monica grew closer to Carla, who gradually opened up about her experiences. Carla had been with the company for nearly a decade, yet she was constantly overlooked for promotions and barely acknowledged by management. She had a warmth and resilience that Monica admired, yet the years of subtle exclusions and dismissals had taken a toll on her spirit. One evening, as they sat together during a brief break, Carla shared a story about a time she had applied for a position in the marketing department. Despite her qualifications, she was passed over in favor of someone with less experience, but who fit the team better, a euphemism that Monica now recognized as an excuse for keeping people like Carla in the background. Their conversation was interrupted by the head of HR, a man Monica had trusted implicitly. He strolled into the break room, barely glancing at Carla before turning to Mona with a dismissive look. "Hey, don't you have some cleaning to do?" he snapped, barely masking his irritation. Monica forced a meek nod, playing her part, but inside she was seething. She had always thought of this man as someone who shared her values, someone who believed in treating employees with respect. But now, seeing him from this vantage point, she realized how deeply flawed her perceptions had been. Night after night, Monica gathered more insights, each one reinforcing the realization that her company had strayed far from the vision she'd worked so hard to build. Her mind raced with ideas on how to confront these issues, but she knew she couldn't rush. The problems were deeply embedded, woven into the fabric of the company by people she had once trusted. She needed more than just anger and determination, she needed proof. The final straw came when she overheard a conversation between two executives discussing cost-saving measures. Their focus, she realized with horror, was on phasing out diversity initiatives and cutting back on employee benefits that primarily supported lower-level staff. One of them laughed, saying, "Monica's too soft. If she knew half of what goes on here, she'd have a heart attack." In that moment, Monica's heart hardened with resolve. She could no longer sit back and observe. It was time to take action, but she knew she needed to be strategic. Her decision was clear: she would expose the truth, but on her terms and in a way that ensured lasting change. As her shift ended that night, Monica walked out of the building feeling more like herself than she had in weeks. Monica returned to her role as Mona the following night, her resolve crystallized. The shock of what she'd witnessed over the past few nights had left her feeling like an outsider in her own company, a stranger peering into a world that shouldn't have existed under her leadership. But now, she was determined to confront it head-on. There was a fire in her she hadn't felt in years, a fierce sense of responsibility mixed with anger. Tonight, she'd gather more evidence and dig even deeper. Early into her shift, Monica crossed paths with Carla, who greeted her with a tired but warm smile. Carla looked worn down, the weight of years of mistreatment evident in the slouch of her shoulders and the tired lines under her eyes. Monica found herself increasingly drawn to Carla's quiet resilience, her unshakable dedication to a company that had given her so little in return. For all the years Carla had devoted, the least Monica could do was help her find justice. As they worked side by side cleaning the hallways, Carla began to open up further, sharing stories that left Monica both horrified and heartbroken. Carla spoke about how she'd been promised raises multiple times, each one a dangling carrot that never materialized. She described a pattern of management quietly excluding her and others like her from meetings, events, and opportunities that could have propelled her career forward. These slights weren't loud or obvious, but they were persistent, an undercurrent of bias that slowly eroded her confidence and sense of belonging. "Sometimes I think I'm just here because it looks good on paper," Carla confided with a defeated shrug. "Diversity and all that. But when it comes down to it, they don't see us as part of the real team." She paused, casting a weary glance down the hallway. It's just how things are, I guess. Monica's heart ached with guilt and frustration. She wanted to reveal her true identity, to tell Carla that things would change, that she'd fight to make it right. But she held back, knowing that the time wasn't right. Instead, she nodded sympathetically, sharing a quiet moment of solidarity with Carla, whose strength humbled her more than she could express. Later that night, Monica decided to push her boundaries and get closer to the heart of the company's problems. She had learned that a team meeting was scheduled for that night, one that several executives would attend to discuss upcoming budget adjustments. She needed to be there, to hear the unfiltered thoughts of the people running her company. She timed her rounds carefully, positioning herself near the closed conference room door just as the meeting began. As she carefully wiped down surfaces nearby, Monica strained to hear their conversation. The muffled voices of her executives filtered through the door, each one carrying tones that ranged from frustration to outright disdain. One of the voices belonged to Lisa, the head of marketing, a woman Monica had always thought of as a forward-thinking leader. But tonight, Lisa's words were sharp, laced with sarcasm and impatience. "I don't know why we're spending so much on these community programs and diversity workshops," Lisa was saying. "It's not like they bring any actual value to the company. Honestly, it's just a drain on our resources." Monica felt a chill run through her. She'd believed Lisa was committed to fostering a supportive environment, yet here she was, openly dismissing the programs Monica had poured her heart into. Another voice chimed in, one she recognized as Dave, the head of HR. "Look, I agree with Lisa. These initiatives look good on paper, sure, but they don't impact our bottom line. I say we cut back and focus on boosting sales. That's what really matters." Monica clenched her teeth, fighting back a surge of anger. These people, these trusted leaders, were supposed to be the backbone of her company's values. But instead they were willing to strip away the very foundation she'd built simply to save a few dollars. The conversation continued, each comment more disheartening than the last. The executives spoke freely, evidently unaware that anyone was listening. They mocked the lower-level employees, laughed about cutting back on benefits, and joked about how little these changes would impact the worker bees. Monica's stomach churned as she listened, the disdain in their voices stripping away any remaining illusions she'd held about her company's culture. Then came the final blow. One of the executives, someone Monica had once thought of as a mentor, said something that shook her to her core. "Monica's too soft," he chuckled, his tone dripping with condescension. "She doesn't have the backbone to make the tough calls. If she knew half of what we've cut, she'd have a heart attack." That was it. Monica knew then that she could no longer stay silent, could no longer sit by and let this continue. Her leadership had been undermined, her values mocked, and her employees disrespected by the very people she'd entrusted with the company. She needed to confront these issues, but she would do it on her terms. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She finished her tasks mechanically, her mind racing with plans and strategies. She was both enraged and invigorated, driven by a newfound purpose. She would gather enough evidence, compile everything she had learned, and confront her executives in a way they wouldn't see coming. As dawn approached, Monica crossed paths with Carla one last time before leaving. Carla looked at her with a mixture of sadness and resignation, as though sensing the storm brewing within her. "You know," Carla said softly, "sometimes I wonder if people like us will ever really be seen." Monica felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to tell Carla everything, to reassure her that things would change, that her voice would be heard. But instead, she simply nodded, gripping Carla's hand in a silent promise. The battle was just beginning, and she would need every ounce of resolve to see it through. As she left the building, Monica knew that her time as Mona was coming to an end. The next steps would be more public, more daring, and infinitely riskier. But if it meant saving her company and the people who had been loyal to her, she was ready for whatever came next. Monica arrived early at her office the next day, her mind racing with plans to confront the executives who had betrayed her values and her trust. Her undercover mission, as Mona had revealed the ugly truth, her company's culture had become a toxic mess, fueled by the very people she had trusted to uphold her vision. But she couldn't simply burst into a meeting and air her grievances. She needed a strategic approach, something that would not only expose the problems but also leave a lasting impact. She knew she needed to confront the executive team at the next all-company meeting, a monthly event where she typically updated employees on the company's progress and future initiatives. This time, however, Monica planned for the meeting to be a platform for employees to speak up, to reveal the unfiltered reality of their daily experiences. Her mind raced with ideas on how to make it happen without tipping off the executives too soon. She had to ensure that this confrontation would be undeniable, that every employee could see exactly what had been happening behind closed doors. With determination in her step, Monica contacted Carla and a few other employees she had gotten to know during her undercover stint. She invited them to the meeting, encouraging them to prepare to share their stories in front of everyone, including the executives. Carla, though hesitant, agreed, expressing a quiet hope that this might finally lead to real change. Monica reassured her that she'd be by her side, though she couldn't yet reveal her full plan. The day of the meeting arrived, and Monica felt a tension in the air as employees gathered in the large conference room. She saw familiar faces among the crowd: Carla, along with other employees who had been subjected to mistreatment, discrimination, or neglect. There was a nervous buzz in the room as people filed in, sensing that something different was about to happen. The executives took their seats at the front, exuding their usual air of authority and confidence. Monica took a deep breath before stepping up to the podium, her mind laser-focused on the task at hand. She greeted everyone warmly, her voice steady but tinged with a seriousness that hinted at what was to come. She began the meeting with the standard updates and announcements, allowing the executives to relax, thinking it would be a routine gathering. But then she shifted the tone, her voice growing firmer. "I know that many of you are aware of recent challenges our company has faced," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room, lingering on the executives at the front. "And as your leader, I take responsibility for those challenges. But I also believe that leadership requires listening, truly listening to the voices of those who make this company what it is." Monica paused, letting her words sink in before she continued. "Over the past few weeks, I have had the opportunity to see this company from a different perspective. I went undercover, working alongside many of you, experiencing the day-to-day realities that shape our workplace." She heard a few gasps ripple through the room as employees looked at one another in surprise, realization dawning on their faces. The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their confident expressions slipping. Monica held her gaze steady, watching as the weight of her revelation landed. "I saw things that disturbed me deeply," she continued, her voice now ringing with a note of anger. "I heard comments, witnessed behaviors, and uncovered attitudes that go against everything this company stands for. And today I want to give those who have been affected by these issues a chance to speak." With that, she gestured toward Carla, who stood hesitantly, her hands trembling slightly. Monica nodded encouragingly, and Carla took a deep breath before stepping forward, her voice soft but filled with determination. "I've worked here for almost a decade," Carla began, her gaze fixed on the crowd, "and during that time I've been passed over for promotions, excluded from meetings, and treated like I don't matter. I thought maybe it was just the way things were, but it wasn't until I spoke to Mona, EU, who I now know was Monica herself, that I realized it didn't have to be this way. We all deserve to be treated with respect, regardless of our position." Her words were met with silence, the weight of her story hanging heavily in the air. Monica watched the faces of her executives, noting the flicker of discomfort and guilt that crossed their expressions. Carla continued, growing bolder with each word as she recounted instances of favoritism and prejudice, exposing the harsh reality of the company's culture. When Carla finished, another employee stood up, then another, each one sharing their experiences, their voices filled with a mixture of frustration and hope. Stories of discrimination, toxic leadership, and favoritism flowed from the employees, painting a vivid picture of the challenges they had faced. Monica felt a swell of pride in their courage, and a renewed sense of responsibility to make things right. As the stories continued, Monica noticed that her executives were now visibly squirming, some avoiding eye contact, others looking down in shame. The people who had once commanded the room with authority were now reduced to uneasy spectators, confronted with the consequences of their actions. Finally, when the stories had been told, Monica stepped forward again, her gaze steady and unyielding. "This is not the company I envisioned," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, fierce determination. "This is not the company I built. And this is not the culture I will allow to continue." She turned her attention to the executives seated in the front row. "I trusted you to uphold the values of this company, to respect the people who work here, and to lead with integrity. But you have failed in that responsibility." Her words were a hammer blow, each one landing with the weight of her authority. She saw one of the executives, Dave, the head of HR, shift uncomfortably, his face pale. Monica let the silence hang for a moment, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in. "Effective immediately, there will be changes," she continued. "Those who have fostered a toxic environment, who have disregarded the well-being of their colleagues, will be held accountable." Her gaze remained fixed on the executives, her message unmistakable. As she concluded, Monica felt a wave of relief and purpose wash over her. She had taken the first step toward restoring her company's values, toward creating an environment where everyone felt seen and respected. She knew the road ahead would be long, that there would be resistance and challenges, but she was ready to face them. Her company would change, not through empty promises but through actions that she would lead with unwavering commitment. The room remained silent for a moment, the employees digesting everything they had heard. Then, slowly, a ripple of applause began, growing in strength as more people joined in. It was a show of solidarity, a sign that they were with her, ready to build a better future for the company together. Monica returned to her office after the meeting, her heart still pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and anger. The employees' stories replayed in her mind the years of mistreatment, the ignored pleas for respect, and the open disregard from the people she'd trusted to lead. The gravity of the situation weighed on her, but she knew that the hardest part was still to come. Exposing the toxic behavior was just the beginning. Now she had to act on her promises and make real changes, even if it meant uprooting the company's leadership. Sitting down at her desk, Monica opened her laptop and began drafting a series of internal memos and policy changes. Her first priority was to reestablish trust with the employees who felt overlooked, mistreated, and undervalued. She outlined plans for a restructuring of the leadership team, a transparent review of the company's promotion practices, and the implementation of an anonymous feedback system that would allow employees to report issues directly to her office. The next step was the most difficult, holding the executives accountable. She set up meetings with each of the senior managers who had contributed to the toxic culture, knowing these conversations would be tense and likely confrontational. Her first meeting was with Lisa, the head of marketing, who had dismissed the diversity initiatives as a waste of resources. Monica braced herself for the discussion, her resolve steely as she prepared to confront the woman who had so thoroughly betrayed her values. Lisa entered Monica's office with a confident smile, clearly expecting a routine conversation. But as Monica leveled her gaze at her, the smile faltered. "Lisa, I'm going to be very direct," Monica began, her tone unyielding. "I went undercover in my own company, and I witnessed firsthand the attitudes you and others have been displaying toward our employees. I know exactly what you think of the diversity programs I implemented, and I've heard how you dismiss the contributions of people who aren't in your inner circle." Lisa's face turned pale, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to respond. Monica held up a hand, cutting her off. "I trusted you to help create an inclusive and supportive workplace. Instead, I found you leading by exclusion, fostering an environment where only a select few feel valued. That's not leadership, Lisa. It's arrogance, and it has no place here." Lisa's confident demeanor crumbled. She stammered, grasping for excuses, but Monica remained unmoved. "Effective immediately, I'm placing you on a probationary period," Monica stated firmly. "You'll be required to undergo leadership and inclusivity training, and your department's culture will be closely monitored. Any further signs of this behavior, and you will be terminated." Lisa nodded weakly, her earlier confidence replaced by a look of defeat. She left the office, and Monica felt a surge of relief but also sadness. Lisa had once been someone she admired, someone she'd believed shared her vision. But the reality had been painfully different. The next meeting was with Dave, the head of HR. He entered the room with a guarded expression, clearly aware that his role in the company's issues had not gone unnoticed. Monica wasted no time in addressing his actions. "Dave, your role as head of HR is to protect our employees and ensure a safe, respectful work environment," Monica said, her voice laced with disappointment. "Yet I found you mocking our diversity initiatives and downplaying the importance of employee well-being. You are supposed to be their advocate, and you failed them." Dave's face tightened, but he didn't deny her accusations. "Monica, I thought I was making decisions that would protect the company's resources." "Resources?" Monica interrupted, her voice hard. "You were responsible for the people, Dave. Not just the budget, but the lives and well-being of the people who work here. You let them down, and you let me down." Monica took a deep breath, the hurt evident in her voice. "I don't see a path forward for you here," she continued, her decision resolute. "You're being let go, effective immediately. I'll ensure a fair severance package, but we need someone in HR who genuinely cares about the employees, not just the bottom line." Dave's face fell, his shoulders slumping as he realized there was no room for negotiation. He nodded, defeated, and left the room. Monica felt a pang of regret but knew it was necessary. Allowing him to stay would only perpetuate the toxicity she was trying to eradicate. The following days were a whirlwind of changes as Monica implemented new policies, communicated her vision, and restructured departments. She met with employees across all levels, inviting them to share their ideas and grievances openly. Carla and others who had once felt invisible now had a direct line of communication with Monica, their feedback no longer filtered through layers of indifferent managers. One evening, as Monica prepared to leave the office, Carla knocked on her door. Monica smiled and waved her in, genuinely happy to see her. "Monica," Carla began, still adjusting to addressing her boss by her first name, "I just wanted to thank you. I didn't think anything would ever change here, and now it feels like a whole new place." Monica's heart warmed at Carla's words. "You don't have to thank me, Carla. You and so many others were brave enough to speak up, to share your experiences. This change is as much yours as it is mine." Carla smiled, visibly moved, and they shared a moment of quiet solidarity. For the first time in a long time, Monica felt hopeful about the company's future. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but the foundation for a healthier, more inclusive culture was finally in place. The journey wasn't over. Monica had committed to a monthly CEO walk, where she would spend time working alongside employees at all levels, maintaining the personal connection that had been lost over the years. She knew she had to be vigilant, to keep an eye on the culture she was rebuilding. But now she wasn't alone. Her employees were with her, and together they would create a company that valued every voice. As Monica locked her office and headed home that evening, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She had faced the truth, rooted out the toxic elements, and was beginning anew, with her company's true spirit restored. Monica's plan to rebuild her company began in earnest. The confrontations with her executives had been necessary, but now came the challenging work of implementing the structural changes she knew would be essential for a lasting transformation. As she walked through the office the day after those intense meetings, she felt a mix of determination and cautious optimism. She was committed to a new level of transparency and inclusivity, but she understood that it would take more than promises to restore her employees' trust. Her first move was to establish a new diversity and inclusion council made up of employees from all levels of the company. She wanted to create a space where employees could openly discuss issues, propose solutions, and directly influence company policies. Carla, to Monica's delight, had agreed to join as one of the founding members. Monica knew that voices like Carla's, authentic, grounded in lived experience, were precisely what the council needed to address the real challenges within the company culture. The initial meeting of the council was tense but productive. Monica attended as an equal, not as a CEO dictating decisions. She listened as employees shared their insights, concerns, and frustrations. The council members were honest, sometimes painfully so, pointing out gaps in the company's policies and detailing incidents that reflected the toxic environment that had taken root over the years. They spoke of the barriers that many employees faced in moving up within the company, the favoritism that permeated teams, and the lack of accountability for managers who mistreated their staff. One particularly powerful moment came when a junior developer, a young man named Amar, shared his experience of being routinely sidelined despite his accomplishments. He spoke with a quiet intensity, describing how he'd been given menial tasks and often excluded from team meetings, even as his peers advanced. "I felt invisible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's hard to give your best when you're constantly reminded that you don't really belong." Monica's heart sank as she listened, but she knew that facing these painful truths was the only way forward. She promised Amar and the other council members that the company would overhaul its promotion and performance review systems to eliminate bias and create a more equitable path to advancement. She wanted every employee to feel that their work was seen and valued, regardless of their background or position. After the council meeting, Monica met with the HR team to implement these changes. She'd brought in a new HR director, someone she trusted to uphold the values that had once made the company a model workplace. Together, they drafted a comprehensive plan to make promotions, raises, and performance evaluations more transparent. Managers would now undergo mandatory training focused on inclusivity and accountability, and an anonymous feedback system would allow employees to report any form of mistreatment without fear of retribution. The new HR director, a woman named Elise with a reputation for integrity and empathy, quickly established herself as a pillar of support within the company. Employees began to feel more comfortable bringing their concerns to her, knowing she would take them seriously. Elise worked closely with Monica to roll out the new policies, ensuring they weren't just symbolic gestures but tangible changes that would shape the day-to-day culture of the workplace. In the weeks that followed, Monica could feel the atmosphere within the company shifting. Employees were starting to engage more openly, cautiously testing the waters of the new culture. There were still moments of hesitation, of course. Some employees had been hurt too deeply to trust in change so quickly, and Monica understood that. She knew that healing would take time, but every step toward transparency was a victory, however small. To strengthen her connection with the workforce, Monica instituted a monthly CEO walk, where she would spend a day shadowing different employees, experiencing their roles firsthand and hearing about their daily challenges. Her first CEO walk was with Carla, and Monica felt a renewed sense of humility as she followed Carla through the relentless tasks of the janitorial team. Seeing the company through Carla's eyes reminded Monica of the commitment she'd made to honor every person's contribution, from the front desk to the executive suite. During a lunch break with Carla, Monica asked about her experiences since the company changes had started. Carla's face softened with a smile. "It's different now, you know," she said, glancing down at her sandwich. "People aren't scared to speak up anymore. We know someone's actually listening. I never thought I'd see the day." Monica felt a swell of pride, but also a reminder of the responsibility she bore. Change was happening, but the journey was far from over. She encouraged Carla and her team to continue giving feedback and promised that she would remain a part of their world, not just as a distant figure in the boardroom, but as a present, active participant in their work lives. Word of the CEO walk spread through the company, and employees began signing up eagerly, each one hoping to show Monica a piece of their world. From product development teams to customer service, Monica experienced the highs and lows of each role, the challenges and the rewards. Every walk reminded her of the strength and resilience of her employees, their dedication, and their willingness to believe in a better future for the company. However, not all reactions were positive. Some of the remaining executives and mid-level managers, those who had managed to escape Monica's initial confrontations, grumbled behind closed doors. They viewed her new initiatives as unnecessary disruptions, a distraction from the real work of meeting sales targets and expanding market share. They continued to dismiss the diversity initiatives and were frustrated by the newfound power given to employees through the council and feedback systems. One evening, Monica heard of a group of managers meeting informally to discuss the state of the company. Intrigued, she decided to attend unannounced, standing just outside the break room door to listen. She heard snippets of their conversation, frustration about coddling employees, mocking remarks about the council meetings, and complaints that the company had lost its edge because of Monica's soft leadership style. It was a painful reminder that resistance remained, that some individuals would cling to the old ways, fearful of the change that threatened their comfortable positions of power. Monica felt a pang of disappointment but refused to let it deter her. She'd come too far, and the support from employees like Carla and Amir fueled her commitment. The next day, she addressed the management team in a closed meeting, her tone clear and unyielding. "I know some of you may disagree with the changes we've implemented," she began, her gaze sharp as it swept across the room. "But let me make one thing very clear. This company is moving forward, and we're doing so with integrity, inclusivity, and respect at the core of everything we do. If you can't align with that vision, this may no longer be the place for you." The silence that followed was tense, but Monica could see that her message had landed. The managers who resisted were now faced with a choice: adapt to the new culture or leave. She knew that some would inevitably choose the latter, but she was prepared for that. The company's future depended on leaders who shared her vision, not on those who viewed progress as a threat. In the weeks that followed, a few managers did indeed resign, unable to reconcile their priorities with the company's new direction. Monica respected their decisions, grateful that those who remained were genuinely committed to fostering the healthy, inclusive culture she was working so hard to build. As the months passed, the transformation within the company became evident. Productivity improved, employee satisfaction ratings soared, and the Diversity Council became a vital part of decision-making. Employees felt heard, valued, and empowered to take ownership of their roles. Carla, Amir, and others who had once felt invisible were now seen as integral parts of the company's growth and success. Monica knew that she had to remain vigilant, that sustaining this culture would require constant effort and reinforcement. She continued her CEO walks, her council meetings, and her direct engagement with employees. And while there were still challenges, the spirit within the company had changed. It was alive with possibility, with the promise of a future built on mutual respect and shared goals. One day, as she walked through the office, she overheard Carla speaking to a new employee, her voice filled with a quiet pride. "You're going to love it here," Carla said, her words genuine. "We're like a family now." It wasn't always this way, but things have changed because people at the top actually listen. Monica felt a lump in her throat as she watched Carla, this woman who had once been hesitant to even make eye contact, now welcoming others with warmth and confidence. It was a reminder of why she had gone undercover, why she had faced the painful truths about her company's culture. And in that moment, Monica felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in years. She had not only saved her company, she had reclaimed it. Months had passed since Monica's undercover mission had revealed the fractures within her company, and though the journey to rebuild it had been challenging, The results were beginning to shine through. The office now buzzed with a renewed energy. There was laughter in the break rooms, employees collaborated across departments without fear, and conversations once held in hushed tones had transformed into open, supportive exchanges. Monica watched this transformation with pride but remained vigilant, knowing that the foundations she'd laid would require constant nurturing to truly last. The Diversity and Inclusion Council had evolved into a powerful force within the company, holding monthly meetings where employees shared updates and proposed new ideas for fostering inclusivity. The council had even led a recent company-wide training program, emphasizing the importance of empathy, active listening, and allyship. Carla had stepped up as a leader within the council, her natural compassion and tenacity inspiring those around her. Monica couldn't have been prouder. Carla's growth reflected the broader transformation of the company itself. One afternoon, Monica received an email from a longtime client who had heard about the company's recent changes. The client congratulated her on the renewed focus on employee well-being and asked if she'd be willing to speak at an industry conference about her journey. The invitation struck a chord with Monica. She hadn't considered sharing her experience beyond the walls of her own company, but the opportunity to inspire change on a larger scale felt too important to ignore. After some thought, she accepted the invitation, preparing to tell the story of the undercover CEO who had confronted the rot in her own company to rebuild it from the inside out. The day of the conference arrived, and Monica took the stage with a sense of purpose. She began her talk by explaining her journey, her voice steady and honest as she recounted the pain of discovering betrayal among her trusted leaders, the difficult decisions she'd had to make, and the challenges of rebuilding a culture from the ground up. Her audience listened, captivated as she described the power of listening, of truly understanding the experiences of every employee regardless of their position. As she spoke, Monica glanced at the front row and noticed Carla, Amir and Elise, the new HR director, watching with pride. They had become her allies, her partners in the journey to create a workplace that valued every voice. Seeing them there reminded her of the reason she had started this mission, of the people who had trusted her to make things right. The conference not only reinvigorated Monica's commitment to her own company, but also brought her a flood of messages from other leaders, all eager to learn from her story. It was clear that her journey resonated far beyond the walls of her office. Her story had become a beacon for leaders looking to transform their organizations. Monica returned to the office with a renewed sense of purpose, more determined than ever to solidify the progress they had made. As she walked through the office, Monica noticed familiar faces smiling at her with genuine warmth and respect. Employees who had once looked away or avoided her gaze now approached her openly, sharing updates on projects or simply stopping to chat. The barriers that had once separated her from her workforce had all but dissolved, replaced by a shared commitment to making the company a place where everyone could thrive. However, Monica knew that she couldn't grow complacent. She continued her monthly CEO walks, shadowing employees and immersing herself in their daily routines. Each walk revealed new insights, small improvements that could be made, and challenges that still needed to be addressed. She found herself spending time with teams she had rarely interacted with before, discovering the intricacies of their work and gaining a deeper appreciation for the contributions they made. One day, during a walk with the customer service team, Monica learned about a recurring issue with the company's software that had frustrated both employees and clients for months. The team had reported the issue repeatedly, but it had been ignored by previous management as low priority. Monica immediately contacted the development team, ensuring that the issue was addressed, and set up a new process to prioritize and resolve such issues in the future. The small change had an immediate impact, not only improving the product but also reinforcing to employees that their voices truly mattered. Weeks later, the quarterly report arrived, and for the first time in a year, the numbers reflected the positive changes Monica had implemented. Profits were up, employee turnover had decreased significantly, and productivity levels had reached new highs. Even client satisfaction had improved, as customers noted the increased engagement and enthusiasm of the company's employees. Monica shared the results with the entire team in an all-hands meeting, acknowledging that these achievements were only possible because of their collective efforts. That evening, she held a private celebration with the Diversity and Inclusion Council, honoring the employees who had been instrumental in the company's transformation. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and pride, each council member reflecting on the journey they had taken together. Carla, who had become a trusted friend as well as a colleague, pulled Monica aside as the evening drew to a close. "Thank you, Monica," Carla said, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You didn't just change the company, you changed all of us. You gave us a reason to believe again." Monica felt a lump form in her throat as she hugged Carla. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "You reminded me of what truly matters, and you helped me see this company for what it could be." In the days that followed, Monica received messages from other CEOs and industry leaders inspired by her story. Many wanted to know how they could implement similar changes within their own organizations. Monica began collaborating with a few of them, helping them create strategies to foster inclusion, transparency, and respect within their companies. Her journey had sparked a movement, a ripple effect that spread beyond her own walls. As the year came to an end, Monica reflected on the transformation her company had undergone. It was now a place where employees could bring their whole selves to work, where voices that had once been silenced were now celebrated. The Diversity Council had grown in size, taking on new projects and initiatives that continued to shape the company's culture. The monthly CEO walks had become a cherished tradition, a reminder of the humility and respect that formed the core of the company's values. One afternoon, as Monica sat in her office reviewing the latest employee feedback report, she received an email from a familiar name. It was from Lisa, the former head of marketing, who had left the company shortly after Monica's changes began. In the email, Lisa apologized for her past behavior, acknowledging the harm she had caused and expressing admiration for the changes Monica had made. Monica read the email carefully, her emotions a mixture of forgiveness and closure. She replied with grace, thanking Lisa for her message and wishing her well in her journey. It was a fitting end to that chapter of the company's story, a reminder of the growth and redemption that were possible when people faced their flaws with honesty. By the time Monica left the office that evening, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced her own shortcomings, confronted betrayal, and made the difficult choices necessary to rebuild her company. And in the process, she had rediscovered her purpose, the vision that had driven her to start this company in the first place. It was no longer just a business, it was a community, a place where people felt seen, valued, and empowered to reach their fullest potential. As she walked through the quiet office, Monica took a moment to appreciate the journey she had been on, the people who had joined her, and the future that now lay before them. Her heart swelled with pride and gratitude, and for the first time in a long time, she knew that her company was truly on the path she had always envisioned, a path guided by empathy, respect, and unwavering commitment to doing right by every person who walked through its doors.